Good evening, and welcome to the San Bruno City Council regular meeting of April the 25th, 2023. Meeting has been called to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. If all would stand, if you're able, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we'll move on to item 4, which is for public comments that are not on the agenda. Individuals will be allowed up to 3 minutes. It is council policy to refer matters raised in this forum for investigation and or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. And first, we'll see if there's any speakers here at the facility and then in Zoom.
Hi, I'm John Barrelier. It's been a while since I've been here. Welcome home. I felt need to be here again for a vital reason. I had many more pages than the 3 minutes would allow, so I've honed it down. It has to do with Proposition 19. I'm very concerned with it. I'm concerned that it was hurriedly written and voted upon. I have some kind of proof to follow that. First, I want to have a glossary of 2 or 3 different terms so we all understand where I'm coming from. The glossary is only maybe 3 words: due process. Due process means that you have to go through a particular procedure before you take our life, our wealth, our safety away. You have to go through this procedure. You must follow it. I'll allude to it later in my speech here. The other is fiduciary. Fiduciary means a lot to different companies, but different professions. To us, it means that we hire you to take care of us. You take care of our money, and we will be better off for having hired you. We won't be worse off because you were involved. I'm going to refer to that later too. The title of the proposition in itself seemed to be far-reaching. It says, the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled Families, and Victims of Wildfires or Natural Disasters Act. Well, I'm a nice guy, I'm going to vote for that, except that that's 2% of the California's population. The rest of us, the 98%, got nailed with the rest of the proposition that was voted on. The people saw that, and they, oh yeah, let's vote for it. I'm going to play something here that's apropos. I thought I had it. It's regarding a sheriff who was commenting on the internet, and I thought he was very brave, risking his job to say this, but actually he had just retired. He was in uniform. He was talking about Proposition 47, and he said if you had tried to put that anywhere else but on the ballot, you would have been arrested for misadvertising, for false advertising. Well, Proposition 19 did the same darn thing. I consider it not just malfeasance, but I figure it's actually designed to dupe us.
Mr. Barrelier, if you could start to wind it up, please.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I apologize. If you could start to wind up, you've been over 3 minutes. I've used up my 3 minutes already? Yes, sir. There's a timer that the city clerk uses to keep.
I'm going to ask for more minutes.
I'm sorry.
Oh, is there anybody in the audience who will give me their 3 minutes?
Mr. Bartolero, that's not how this works. This isn't Congress. We can't yield the floor. So no. If you like, also, you're always welcome to email or write out anything. The council's more than happy to receive that.
No, I kind of thought this would happen. The last thing I want to say is this, that there was a perfect storm, and there were 13 items that I could allude to that made this a false item. And I will say to you, too, that it's probably, are we looking at the worst white-collar crime in California? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartolero, for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, well, you already said this is Nancy Foreman. I just want to give a big thank you to the Park and Rec Department, especially Dan and his crew for providing soil and plants and clearing some planters that I had requested. A big thank you to Emily Van Eck. She's a local master gardener here in San Bruno, and she helped with the selection of the low maintenance and drought resistant plants. A big shout out to Mayor Rico Medina for taking time to come to our send off before he had to go to another meeting. To Councilman Hamilton and his daughter for coming and participating in planting. To Councilman Marty Medina for helping out the Thursday prior. To Mike and Norma at Grand Leader for hosting and letting us stage at the deli and run havoc through there all morning and for helping provide lunch. And to the whole adopter planter family. I think we have a really great second year beginning, and I look forward to watching all the plants grow and the community benefiting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Okay. Again, my name's Tom Garcia, and I want to thank you, honorable city officials of San Bruno, for having this meeting. I'm requesting, this is regarding the Skyline Park or Darby and Oxford Lane issues. Is this the right time for this?
And I apologize. Thank you for asking the question. I very much appreciate it. That is on the agenda, so this is not the opportunity under conduct of business, which is item 7. That is when would be the appropriate time to speak.
My apologies, and thank you.
Not a problem whatsoever. Thank you for asking. Next speaker, please. Thank you to everyone for their comments. Now we'll move. Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
You hear me?
Now we can.
From John's discussion of Proposition 19 for the benefit of people that don't even know what that is. There was a campaign that was very deceitfully put forward. I think, as a 54-year-old Californian, the most deceitful campaign I've seen. And that was sensationalizing the ability to port property tax from a home if you were over 55 years old, and also put more money in for the firefighting funds. What it buried was taking away the ability for the parent-child transfer of property tax basis, or in the case of parents that have been deceased, the grandparent to grandchild ability. This hits very hard in California. Initially, I jumped on the bandwagon because I have a cousin who's undiagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, doesn't get a dime of disability or anything because it came on in the late 20s, which happens in males quite often. Then I started to see this was actually going to systematically destroy the only reasonable cost rentals that exist in that state, in our state, and those are mom and pop owned. That is the parents that own the duplex, that rent it to the school teacher, that don't raise their rent every second the ability is there to do so. There's a neighbor of mine who has a disability, who's blind, has no idea this train is coming. The owners are in their late 80s, and it makes me sick. I'll deal with my cousin's situation somehow, but it will destroy our state. You want the paramedic to live near where they work. You want the school teacher, the garbage person, etc. So John feels very upset about this. There is a growing effort with the state constitutional amendment number 4 that's been put forward by Senator Sayarto in Southern California. But I just wanted to connect the dots. Still, many people that live here have no clue about this. So that's it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on the fly.
Thank you for your comments, and you did very well. Thank you. All right, any other public comments? Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 5, which is announcements and presentations. First announcement is Recology of San Bruno and the City of San Bruno have partnered to offer again a community cleanup drop-off, which is the event is scheduled this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. This event will be held at 975 Sneath Lane. Participants will have the opportunity to unload up to 3 cubic yards of waste, which are including bulky items, e-waste, appliances, latex paint. Other paint and chemicals will not be accepted, but you certainly can call to schedule with Recology. There is no dirt, rock, or concrete. If there are questions, you may contact Recology at 650-583-8536. Again, that's 650-583-8536. Next, item B, going to be issuing a proclamation declaring the month of May 2023 as Mental Health Month. And we will be having, my understanding is a San Mateo County Behavioral Health Commissioner, which will be joining us remote.
Good evening, City Mayor, Council members, City Manager, staff, and residents of San Bruno. I'm Yoko A, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of the San Mateo County Behavioral Health Commission. The County Behavioral Health Commission is committed to the goals of promoting wellness and recovery, enhancing public awareness and knowledge of mental health and substance use conditions, and eliminating stigma. Thank you to San Bruno for proclaiming 2023 May Mental Health Month. May Mental Health Month is observed across San Mateo County, California, and the United States. Lime green is the national color for mental health and represents how we want to bring a bright light to an important issue that may be hidden or seen negatively. Mental Health Month is one of the best times of the year where we reduce stigma, connect people to services, and promote wellness for mental health and substance use conditions. This year's statewide theme is #ShareForMental Health. San Mateo County's Mental Health Month will feature a variety of virtual and in-person events, advocacy days, and communication campaign. Our communication campaign will be in English and Spanish, and events will be in English, Spanish, and Cantonese. Mental Health Month is important to me because mental health impacts the functionality of individuals, families, and the communities. Recognizing the symptoms of mental health challenges often are not easy. It takes bravery and autonomy to seek help in a long journey. Starting today, I invite you to take action on one or more options. 1, use #ShareForMentalHealth to spread the word about Mental Health Month on social media. 2, attend a local Mental Health Month event. 3, wear a lime green ribbon. You can wear one physically on your clothing or virtually on your social media profile. This can spark a conversation and sharing about mental health. More support for above options and more details on free event and resources at smchealth.org/MHM. Once again, thank you so much to the San Bruno community for recognizing May Mental Health Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for being here and your comments. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and read some of the whereases for the proclamation. Whereas in 2021, 1 out of every 8 San Mateo County adults likely had serious psychological distress in the past year. From 2019 to 2021, San Mateo County youth grade 7 and 11 reported chronic sadness and hopelessness, 29% and 43% respectively in the past 12 months. And whereas every day, millions of people face stigma related to mental health and substance use conditions and may feel isolated and alone, going years before receiving any help if left untreated. Have life expectancies 25 years shorter than the general population. And whereas the City of San Bruno has joined the San Mateo County Mayor Mental Health Initiative, where mayors across the 20 cities and towns in San Mateo County have come together with the mission of promoting, preventing, and early intervention of mental health and substance use conditions of city residents. Whereas the San Mateo County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services Office of Diversity and Equity, Mayor's Mental Health Initiative and partners are collectively organizing activities that our community can participate throughout the month, including free in-person and virtual events, advocacy days, and social media campaigns. Now, therefore, it be resolved that I, Rico E. Medina, Mayor of the City of San Bruno, do hereby recognize May 2023 as Mental Health Month in the City of San Bruno to enhance public awareness of mental health, to help end the stigma, and direct members of the community to resources and support for mental health and substance use conditions. And this is something that 2 or 3 years ago, I think 3 at this point, one of the unique things that in a county that every mayor came together and was on the initial stage of this to bring this. And it's those that there are stigmas. I have tried to speak of that myself. And what I can tell you is sometimes just having people there that are supportive and helpful to you and being available is important. So when we think it doesn't matter, when you reach out, it does, and the way in which you reach out does matter a lot. So with that, I would, again, appreciate the commissioner being here. Now we'll move on to item C. San Bruno is offering the Summer Access Scholarship through the San Mateo County Summer Enrichment Program. Grants are available to San Bruno children in need to attend summer camp in 2023. Learn more and see if your family qualifies at sanbruno.ca.gov, Summer Scholarship. And next, I'd like to move on to item D. Receive informational update from the San Bruno Park School District on the Children's Day. Oh gosh, why did I just blank? Children's Day, thank you, book day, sorry. And we have one of our board trustees, Jennifer Blanco, who is at a conference 3 hours ahead, but was going to zoom in and give us some promotion because it is this weekend, this Saturday.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. Yes, well, I am very happy to report. I am reporting straight from our nation's capital. It has been a couple of days of just great conversations with other trustees from up and down our great state of California. Today we were able to visit and had a reception at Capitol Hill, and lo and behold, to our surprise, Nancy Pelosi was there with us today. So it was pretty amazing experience. So good evening, Mayor, City Council members, interim city manager, city staff, and members of our community who are present attending tonight's meeting or via Zoom, such as myself. I want to take this opportunity to thank you to allow me to present before you tonight about this weekend's DIA celebration. So a little bit about DIA, and then if we're ready to show the video that we created from last year. Our district has been celebrating the National Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros, Children's Day, Book Day since 2009. Some states are considered a DIA state, such as ours, and what that means to us is when a library celebrates DIA in our community, the state library system has a funding source where libraries can tap into grant dollars to celebrate DIA in their communities. Often known as DIA, meaning Day for Our Daily Commitment, this literacy initiative is a collaboration of national and state library and literacy organizations, educators creatively striving to share book joy as its importance. Culminating April Children's Day Book Day celebrations that unite communities. April book fiestas are held in libraries, schools, homes, parks, etc., often or near April 30th. Dia is also used to mean diversity in action. And Dia is a day that connects children with books, exposes them to cultures, honors the home language, and reinforces connection to community. Here in our hometown, celebrating Dia has become one of our traditions, such as the Posey Parade. We collaborate with our schools, city council agencies, nonprofit service groups, and the San Bruno Public Library to provide a free celebration. Also at Dia, parents learn the importance of literacy, have the opportunity to meet our police and first responders, connect with resources they may need, and enjoy a day celebrating our children's place in society. We celebrate by storytelling, book giveaway to each child, multicultural performances, and creative children's activities. This San Bruno tradition also introduces families to preschools, elementary schools, and our library's programs, and we are dedicated to fostering children's love of books. I want to just give you what our program will look like this weekend. We will have opening up a danza azteca to open up our celebration with the blessing and the land acknowledgement. Sheriff Christina Corpus is coming to read a book to our kiddos, alongside with our Superintendent Matt Duffy, who couldn't be with us today. And your very own Councilmember Hamilton, who will be coming to read a book as well. Every year we showcase and highlight a certain culture, country. This year, we're going to be showcasing the country of Colombia through dance, and they will be performing also. They are a dance group that also performs in Carnaval in San Francisco. So if any of you have not been to Carnaval, or if you want to get your cultural fix, that's where you need to go to get that taken care of. And so we're going to be very fortunate to have them perform in Carnaval. And also the Danza Azteca also performs in Carnaval. So we're getting the best of the best. So if we can show the video, if possible.
It's being pulled up right now.
Yes, thank you. And if you have any questions for me after the video, that'd be great. Well, if you can't show it, that's okay. I don't want to take more time than I've already taken, but if there are any questions for me.
Thank you, Vice President Trustee Blanco. Are there any questions or comments from colleagues?
Just a quick comment. I mean, this is a wonderful event for those who haven't attended. It's again, it's 12 to 4 on Saturday in City Park. I encourage you to come out and bring your kids, especially, and it's a great way, as the trustee said, to really instill a love of reading for your kids. And you can watch me read. It'll be great.
And also, if I read correctly, there is some additional available parking at 201 Balboa, which is the
That's correct.
former El Crystal Elementary School site, since there's obviously still some construction in the city park for the Recreation Aquatic Center.
Right. And with all due respect, Council Member Hamilton, it's actually till 4:30.
Thank you.
we have an extra half hour.
Okay. With that,
Thank you.
This is Dia de los Niños, Dia de los Libros. Translation, Children's Day Book Day. Dia de los Niños has many components. There's a literacy component, there's a cultural component, there's a parent ed component. This is a free day for our community. All ages are welcome, all families. And we partner with different service clubs. We partner with county, San Mateo County agencies, and we partner with our city agencies. I'm proud to say that our district has been honoring the children's place in our community since 2008.
This is probably one of the most premier events in San Bruno. Look behind you, families, children. This is what we live for, something that's centered around community and uplifting people and doing it in a way where our kids have fun. It brings people from throughout the area and they're excited. They're excited because now they can go out, bring their kids. The kids don't realize it, but it's celebrating literacy.
We're here at Learning Wheels. Learning Wheels is a program as part of Project READ that services South San Francisco, San Bruno, Daly City, and town of Colma. The first 5 years of a child's life is really indicative of future success in school and later on in life. So reading with your child, speaking with your child, singing with your child, being really verbal and expanding vocabulary early on really helps with the transition for babies and toddlers when they get into preschool and into kindergartens.
Today was a good turnout. After 2 years, they've been waiting for it. It's like a welcome back. It's been a fun-filled day. Our children love it, parents love it. The reaction has just been very supportive from the community.
Well, Children's Day, it's all about the children. It's about fun, it's about reading, it's about enjoying their friends, playing. We made slime.
And we did a bookmark.
We made a bookmark, and you played in the jumper.
Yeah, so much fun.
It's so much fun. Lots of great stuff going on. Lots of great crafts, booths, information. It's just great to see the whole community and the schools back together again, enjoying everybody.
The kids were given these passports where they got stamps or stickers for doing different activities at the different booths. And then once they had visited at least 5 to come by here and pick up their free book. A lot of kids actually couldn't believe it was free. To be able to tell them that it's free and for them to take home forever and ever is my favorite thing to say. You know, we're all about building home libraries, so the more books that a child has around them at home, it's just really beneficial.
Believe me, you don't want to miss this. It's always a great time, it's a great party, it's just a great vibe every year.
Come out next year and join us. Have a great time, spend the day, have lunch with your family, and check out all the stations and get a couple free books.
If you're looking for a fun educational day out with the family, this is the place to be.
Once again, I want to, it is a very successful, and of course, whether you cooperates as well. So I want to thank you, Trustee Blanco, for, again, being a part of this and the district and giving of your time on the East Coast. So we'll let you depart, and thank you for your time, and so you can get off to bed and get up early for your next session.
Thank you. Y buenas noches a todos.
And safe travels home. And
Thank
please,
you so much.
please tell Sonia I said hello.
Okay, I will. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Next, we'll move, if there are any members of the public that wish to speak on any of the topics under presentation or announcements, this would be the opportunity.
Are you still there? My apologies. I guess somehow I got muted. All right. Thank you, honorable city officials of San Bruno. My name's Tom Garcia. I own a fourplex on Oxford Lane.
Mr. Garcia,
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
apologize, sir. I really apologize, but I'm going to let you know when it's the item. You'll hear me. It will be read. It's regarding approving various curb markings changes to install, and that's on conduct of business, which will be item 7. We're just about there, and that will be the time for you to go ahead and speak after the staff presentation. So with that, let's move on to item 6, consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented in earlier council action and or may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. There will be one single public comment period for all items in this section unless a council member requests to pull an item for a separate vote. Colleagues, for A through G, are there any separate votes that want to be pulled? Seeing, hearing none. Are there any items that wish to have a question or a comment on? Seeing, hearing none. Let's see if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on consent. Then I'll bring it back to the council for action on consent, please.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion Salazar, seconded Hamilton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 5-0, pass unanimously. Now we'll move on to conduct of business, which is item 7.
Mr. Mayor, may I interrupt?
Yes.
We are having technical difficulties right now, and I need to ask the council if we can take a break to see if we can get technology to cooperate. It's going to affect our PowerPoint, and so if you can give us a 5 to 10 minute break, we're going to work with the staff to see if we can get this working.
Thank you, City Manager. At this point, due to that, we will go ahead and recess for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we will return for conduct of business, which is what we're here for. I'm sure for those folks that are here and watching at home, we'll be in recess. Been reconvened. We are currently on item 7, which is conduct of business, and I'll ask the city clerk to read. Thank you. And first, we'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Hamilton.
So due to the proximity of my home to the areas in question, I am prohibited by law from participating in this item. So I will be recusing myself and stepping out for this item, and I will return to the meeting for item 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we have before us the Public Works Director, Mr. Lee, and Director Lee, I will now turn it over to you, please. And colleagues, if we would wait to the conclusion of the presentation before I ask for questions, and then just for everybody listening and here in the audience, what the process will be is staff will give their presentations, council will ask questions on the presentation, then after that we'll take a pause, and then at that time we'll hear from the public. In the audience will come first, which will be read by the city clerk, and then we'll go for Zoom. Since you've come down here, we certainly want to give you that opportunity first in case you need to leave. So with that, Director Lee.
Good evening, Mayor Medina, members of the council. As you stated, my name is Matt Lee. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of San Bruno. I will be here with Fire Marshal Gage Slice and Senior Traffic Engineer Harry Yip on the presentation. As you see on the title slide, my name's not on there. Haywan Ritchie, our Deputy Director and City Engineer, was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately she fell under the weather and couldn't make it. This item is being returned from an October 2022 council meeting in which council requested additional information, primarily revolving around this on-site parking availability. And Public Works partnered with the Planning Division to generate the parking counts, which we will discuss further in this presentation. And so for the agenda today, we're going to talk about the objectives, and then our Senior Traffic Engineer, Harry Yip, will get into the background of the existing conditions with our Fire Marshal, Gage Slice, discussing the fire code, and then we will go back to the proposed red curb striping, and then the updates since the October 4th, 2022 meeting with the information that council requested, and then tonight's recommendation, and then we will all be here for any questions that you may have. And the objective tonight is to consider adopting the resolution to take action on installing red curb markings on Oxford Lane and Darby Place. The slides here show Oxford Lane and Darby Place. Darby Place is on the right photo and Oxford Lane is on the left. As you can see, the items highlighted in red on the Oxford photo are red curb markings that are already existing at that street. And Darby Place also has red curb right at the entrance. The peach that is now being shown on Oxford Lane is the proposed red striping, red curb striping that is proposed for Oxford Lane, which is approximately 2 blocks, and for Darby Place, which is essentially for about a block and around the cul-de-sac. Essentially, we'll get into more details for why those proposals are before council with the existing conditions. But what I would like to state is the red curb, although it looks like a long linear frontage, with the exception of the cul-de-sac on Darby Place, no legal parking spaces are actually being removed except for the 2 at the end of the cul-de-sac. And so just to reorient it again, I wanted to highlight that the red curb is the existing curb and the peach curb is what is being proposed. And so just a reminder for the October 22 council meeting, it was previously brought before council at that time, and several residents that attended the meeting expressed concerns about the reduction of parking availability. City Council continued the item and requested that staff take a further look on the analysis of off-street parking counts. To refresh everyone's memory, we're going to enter into the background information and the existing conditions with Harry Yip, our senior traffic engineer.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Harry Yip, and I'm the city's senior traffic engineer. And here I'm going to go into a little bit about the background and existing conditions of this area. So Skyline Park is the name of this subdivision that was built in 1967. It is in the southwest corner of the city. It is bounded by Highway 280 and on the right, and Highway 35 on the left on the map here. It consists of 94 multifamily housing units and townhome units that are along these two public streets that Matt mentioned, Darby Place and Oxford Lane. So Darby Place would be on the lower corner, and then the Oxford Lane would be on the top part there. So this subdivision had some unique design and building designs, unique street and building designs. First of all, it has a narrow street design. Secondly, it has non-standard curbs, and there's no really any space between driveways, and there's also very little space between the buildings and the roadway. This area had been, parking had not been enforced by city because these signs were posted on the entrance to Oxford Lane and Darby Way, making it seem like these were private streets. But in fact, city worked with the city attorney and concluded that both streets are public. And since then, we have requested those signs to be removed by the HOA. This new information also confirms that the city's police department has the legal authority to enforce the applicable laws and codes within Darby Place and Oxford Lane. And the city council does have governance over the curb markings for code conformance. A little bit more detail about the individual streets. Darby Place here is going from left to right. It's a cul-de-sac street that ends on the right side there. Many of the buildings built on this roadway are within 10 feet of the roadway edge, and many are actually less than 5 feet. And there is sidewalk on one side, on the top side, where the townhomes are. And there are shared doorways on the duplexes and fourplex units that are on the bottom side, and they all share the same entryway. And this is Oxford Lane. On the top, the street out there is Crestmore. On the bottom is, the bottom and the aisles are considered Oxford Lane. The bottom row of residential units are the townhomes, and on the aisles, the slanted vertical aisles are the fourplexes and duplexes. And there are sidewalks on some blocks in this section of the roadway. So these are some of the existing conditions that we had seen and were reported to us. We see, inadequate driveway depth resulting in vehicles overhanging into the public street. And then we also see, cars blocking the sidewalks, blocking driveways, and blocking those entryways to the duplexes and fourplexes. Right now, I'm going to pass it off to the Fire Marshal Gage Slice to talk about some fire access issues.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, members of the staff, and everybody who showed up tonight. I'm Fire Marshal Gage Slice. I'm here to provide information about fire and life safety topics associated with tonight's topic. As you can see in the picture on the slide, an emergency scene can be pretty intense. It's essential to provide access as quickly as possible to get first responders on scene to mitigate the emergency. This was a scene from a fire last week. As you can see in the picture, multiple fire department apparatus arrived on scene and quickly filled up the road. The fire code allows the current code to apply to existing structures, facilities, and conditions that, in the opinion of the fire code official, constitute a distinct hazard to life or property. The current fire code requires a minimum clear width of 20 feet and increases to 26 feet when near a hydrant, or a fire hydrant. Due to the ongoing parking violations experienced across both streets, as referenced in Harry's previous slides, staff recommends applying the current fire code requirements for streets width and turnarounds on these two streets. This recommendation for council consideration tonight ensures the most feasible approach to the most current conditions. Therefore, staff recommends the installation of new red no parking zones on Darby Place and Oxford Lane to improve traffic circulation, pedestrian safety, and emergency access. Thank you.
Okay, next I'm going to talk about the proposed red curb striping in some more detail. So as Matt had gave you a high-level overview, this is for Darby Place. There is an existing red curb already at the entryway from Crestmore Drive. And our proposal is to add this peach that would stretch on the top part of Darby Place and wrap around the cul-de-sac. And then also some additional red curb in front of those shared entryways for the duplexes and the fourplexes. A little bit more detail about what's going on the cul-de-sac. So the map on the left is what's shown as Darby Place is the actual outline of the public right-of-way in that circular area and the extension of that. So that is considered public right-of-way, and then there are some parking spaces that are on private property that are just on top of that circular area. So I think there are about 9 spaces that exist, and to better enhance turnaround for fire trucks, our proposal would remove 1 full parking spot and reduce 2 of those spots into like a motorcycle parking to provide that enhanced turnaround for fire trucks. And then this is Oxford Lane. This is all the existing red curb already that's out there today. We are proposing to add that horizontal stretch on the bottom in front of all the townhomes, and then one on the whole block on the left aisle, and then one between the island on the right aisle. So there would be no loss of legal parking in this area. All of this is already not legal parking, but we want to emphasize that it shouldn't be parked. Now I'm going to go into some of our actions that we had did since the October council meeting. City had reviewed the original planning application from 1965, and we didn't find any specific information or details specific to parking plans, requirements, or configurations or regulations. We reviewed the covenants and conditions and restrictions, but which also didn't have any conditions or restrictions about parking. We have also met with the HOA management on partnership solutions. After discussing the parking situation in further detail, the city recommended to the HOA to modify their CC&Rs, the covenants and conditions and restrictions, to further expand on parking restrictions. which could include but not limited to ensuring garage spaces are utilized for vehicles and not storage. And this also, we wanted them to implement additional enforcement tools for commercial vehicle parking and common property parking spaces. And we also we also restored some of the parking spaces out on Crestmore Drive that were being used by AT&T for construction. And then we've also performed an off-street parking count as requested by City Council. So this map is the map for Oxford Lane, and this is what we was in the original planning application, and this is what we used to make our parking counts. On the top, the yellow slanted portion, that's all the townhomes, and on the vertical aisles with the red and the orange, those are the duplexes and fourplexes. And then you see some blue. The blue represents some of the shared common parking that this subdivision has that's on private property. And then the blue purplish lines represent some of the on-street parking that is legal in this area. And and those little hexagons with the numbers indicate the number of parking spaces for that unit or for that shared parking area or for those on-street parking lines. So for Oxford Lane, we counted a total of 124 off-street spaces, and then 35 guest common use spaces. So that gives us 159 total parking spaces on Oxford Lane. For Darby Place, we did the similar thing. We got the yellow is the townhomes, attached townhomes, and then the red and the orange is the fourplexes and duplexes, and then the blue is the shared common parking between the property owners on private property, and then as you said, there's no on-street parking here. With that, we counted a total of 100 spaces. 78 of that is off-street, and 22 is a shared use parking. So the total parking count for this subdivision was 259. That equated to about 2.75 parking spaces for each residential unit. So these are some of the actions that the HOA had done since we've met with them. They have removed the private street signage. They have instituted a private parking permit program. And then they've also are initiating a volunteer parking ambassador program, which is to find volunteers in that area to serve as parking ambassadors and will provide courtesy reminders about parking rules and regulations to any violators. And once this is implemented, the city will monitor and evaluate the program to determine its efficacy in curbing the multitude of parking violations that occur on Darby Place and Oxford Lane. So in conclusion, this is just a kind of a totality of many reasons why we want to consider these parking restrictions. There's the California vehicle violations of blocking driveways and sidewalks. There's the inadequate driveway depth resulting in vehicle overhangs into the street. There's residents using multiple shared use parking spaces. There's residents using carports and garages for non-vehicle parking purposes. It doesn't meet the current fire code. And there is no on-street parking originally intended for this area. So a reminder of what tonight's action is, we would want to consider adopting a resolution approving various curb marking changes to install no parking red zones on Darby Place and Oxford Lane. And with that, that's all we had. So city staff and our consulting traffic engineer Saeed Fakri, who was at the October 2022 meeting, is on hand to take any questions on this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to open up to my colleagues on questions on the presentation, but before I do, just so people can understand how when staff says 2.75 parking spaces for each unit, of course, there's some calculation to derive that number, and I'm sure if I lived there, it would be, I don't see it. So can you help articulate of how that number was calculated?
Sure, no problem through the mayor. We took the total of off-street parking spaces that we identified as part of the plan and part of the site visit between Public Works and the Planning Division staff, and we divided that amongst the 94 units that are at the Skyline Park subdivision. So based on the 259 vehicles over 94, it comes to about 2.7 vehicles per unit on average.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to have that clarified because it didn't really say it in the presentation, and I think that would be a question I would have. May I now at this time bring it to my colleagues for questions on the presentation, please? Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. I could see that this is contentious. People love their parking, and but my question for staff tonight is, on Darby Place, if it wasn't a dead-end street, if there was a way to put a fire connection road, I don't know how steep it is right there, but connecting to Crestmore from the southern end, would that, it's no longer a dead end. So I'm just trying to find other creative solutions to see how we could not put so much red curb, which would take up so much parking. So my understanding of the requirement is if it's a dead end of greater than 150 feet, then these conditions apply, with the road being 20 feet wide. So if there was a way to make an exit, a fire exit to Crestmore from the southern edge of Darby Place, would that be possible and not have, I mean, it's going to be possible, somebody would have to pay for it, but would that be a solution to not having the red curb?
For that question, I'll call up
Sure.
Fire Marshal Gage Slice so he can speak more on behalf of if a fire lane was created so Darby Place is no longer a cul-de-sac, if some of the proposed red curbing could be removed.
Fire Marshal?
So the 20-foot lane width is required by the fire code. The turnaround is required because it exceeds 150 feet. If you got rid of the turnaround or you made the road go all the way through, kind of similar to the other side of the neighborhood, you don't need a turnaround then. It doesn't exclude the 20 feet though. The 20 feet is the minimum width of a fire road. You just wouldn't have to have a fire department turnaround at the end if the road went all the way through.
So they would still need to be red curb there?
There still need to be 20-foot clear width.
Got it. Thank you.
I think Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to understand your slide image on number 14, where the proposed marking would be on the cul-de-sac. Would that space be enough to turn the engine, the fire engine, if we put, so on the marking and also the proposed development, this was designated for guest parking, I think 8 parking, and then your marking is actually behind the line of the spaces. What does that mean, that you're marking the whole cul-de-sac and not that designated guest parking will not be utilized anymore?
That's a good question, Councilmember Alvarez. I think what you're referring to is the cul-de-sac at the end of Darby Place.
Or the Darby Place, yeah.
Where there's the association's off-site parking on private property at the end of that cul-de-sac. Those parking spaces will not be removed if they're within the red curb line. The ones that are removed are the ones at the farther end, the two, because they get cut off at the end of that cul-de-sac. So there's currently 9 spaces in that area, and there will be 1 parking space at the end of the cul-de-sac that will be removed, and the other 2 parking spaces will be cut short, where they can either fit a shorter vehicle or more for a motorcycle.
And the purpose of this red marking is so the fire engine can turn around?
I'm looking at Fire Marshal Gage Slice, and he's nodding yes.
Would that be enough? I feel that even if you put that red marking, the only way to get with the cars parked on the other turnaround, the cul-de-sac area, would not be enough for the fire engine to go back around, to maneuver around the cars parked.
For further clarification.
It would be just like basically backing in.
And Fire Marshal, if it's okay, once you've answered, if you don't mind just staying here. I mean, I know you need to get steps in, but I need them worse than you do, so it'll just save us some time.
Of course. So the current code, the way it's written now, requires 96 feet for a cul-de-sac. There is no feasible way to get 96 feet in that cul-de-sac. So the determination with the red curb, where we actually marked around, was to kind of delineate where the public roadway goes and the parking spots that belong to the association. So there's a separation. So this helps remind people that that area, so they don't double park behind people. They don't think there's 2 parking spaces there. They keep that nice round opening. They'll give us the best access into there. It is a tight turn. We are going to do a few turnarounds to get around. It's not perfect. There is no feasible way to make it 96 feet that's required in the current fire code. If that answers your question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Salazar.
First off, I just want to thank staff for going back and doing the extra work. I know we had a lot of questions last time, and I definitely appreciate the additional information regarding the number of spaces and everything. One comment that stood out to me was the fact that we are not taking away any legal spaces. And so currently, because there are really no parking, no designated or actual usable parking areas between the driveways, what does the red striping really, is it really necessary? Does it make a difference? Because if somebody is blocking a driveway, they could be cited if there's a complaint. So does the red striping actually give us anything additional if there's a complaint?
Good question, Councilmember Salazar, through the mayor. I just want to make sure that it's absolutely clear that with the exception of the cul-de-sac on Darby Place and those 3 parking spaces that we mentioned earlier, 1 will be removed and 2 will be shortened. But other than that, there's no legal parking spaces actually being removed. If we recall from our October 2022 council meeting, there was a long, healthy discussion on enforcement and enforcing the California Vehicle Code at that location versus with the California Vehicle Code versus enforcing at that location with the fire red curb. And with that, I was wondering if I could bring up Acting Chief Jeremy Brandenburg to kind of have a quick discussion on the challenges of enforcement for driveways and other such parking enforcement matters.
Captain, Acting Chief.
How you doing? Good evening, Mayor. These issues are very complicated, I mean, to say the least. When you have multiple different vehicle codes, muni codes, all kind of focusing on an area where there is no really easy way to allow someone to park in a driveway where a car doesn't fit. So From the police department's perspective, we're asking for clarity from not only the council, but from Public Works and the fire department to give us direction about what enforcement is necessary to provide that safe access by the fire department. So enforcement's a very evolving problem. There's warning processes, there's choosing not to write tickets, there's writing tickets. I mean, that can kind of come in all different facets, but really on Darby, it's been a complicated area since I've been with the city for 21 years. It's been complicated. It changes periodically, you know, public, private, back and forth. So I think from the police department's perspective, we're just looking for clarity from the council and from Public Works and the fire department about what enforcement posture we want to enforce up there and how to make it safe for the fire department to respond with their apparatus.
Okay, thank you for that. I definitely appreciate that input. But so what would be the difference in the approach if somebody is parked in a red zone versus somebody is parked in front of somebody's driveway?
I would like
Are we talking about, is it a different infraction? Is one more serious than the other? Or is it just a matter of sort of sending or making it more obvious to the residents that it shouldn't be done?
Yeah, so I'm going to have Acting Chief Brandenburg come up again, but before he steps on board, I want to just...
That's why he already beat you to the punch. He came up and he sat next to
I know. They're just good like that, San Bruno PD. So I want to just make sure that the intent behind all this, there's a lot of slides and there's a lot of information, and so hopefully it doesn't get lost. The intent behind this is to really educate the neighborhood of good parking practices, and so that's why we're trying to work with the HOA to come up with an ambassador program and provide the education before we go into enforcement, one of the multiple E's as part of any traffic and transportation effort. So the intent was to try to provide that as much as possible. I'll have Acting Chief Brandenburg come up and talk about the difference between enforcing a red curb versus just say a block driveway.
Thank you, Director Lee. There really is no difference. I think it's more for clarity for the public that the red curb means you can't park. You still can't park and block in a driveway. You can't blocking a sidewalk. It's just different vehicle codes, and there's different fees associated to those violations. But I believe the intent of this is to make it more clear that parking isn't allowed. But from the enforcement posture, they're all different vehicle codes. They all have different fines, and they're all enforceable once we made that determination that it is public property and not private property.
Okay. And before I let you go, we've made exceptions in the past where people with disabilities can request a blue stripe in front of their property. Once it's made red, would that eliminate the opportunity for somebody to blue stripe in front of their house if there's a necessity?
I think based on what Fire Marshal Slice is saying is that due to the road width, you couldn't legally park a car there either way with the 20-foot, the need of 20 feet.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to compare the approach for the proposed peach line for an additional red marking between Oxford Lane and the Darby, where they both have the cul-de-sac and designated guest parking. To me, it makes sense having that straight red line and not take away some of the parking like we did for the Darby place. Because technically, I mean, if you have a straight path, you know, that the way we approach the Darby, it's basically the same concept as how we approach the Oxford Lane. There's very minimal space to basically maneuver the fire engine and the access if we would to occupy the whole space of the Oxford place, the whole street is a straight line. How is it that we are not approaching it the same way to the Darby place?
That's a great question, Councilmember Alvarez. Through the mayor, I'm going to have Fire Marshal Gage Slice come up and talk about the differences between the Oxford cul-de-sac versus Darby Place cul-de-sac.
Can I borrow that? Yeah. Just a reference. Yeah. So the, excuse me. As you referenced on Darby Place, we did the fire red curbing around the whole entire cul-de-sac. And the main reason why we did that on Darby Place and not Oxford is because on Darby Place, it exceeds 150 feet. So the code specifies if you have, and a lot of developers do this, they build fire roads to 149 feet. So they don't have to put a turnaround in. So if you look at Darby Place, that exceeds 150 feet, so it's required to have a turnaround. If you look at Oxford, on those areas where the cul-de-sacs go in, it does not exceed 150 feet, so it does not require a turnaround. So the code specifies anything longer than 150 feet needs a turnaround, anything less than 150 feet, which applies to Oxford on both sides, is not greater than 150 feet, so that's why we didn't have to do the whole cul-de-sac like we did on the on Darby. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from colleagues on the presentation at this time? If not, we're going to take a pause so we can switch over. And then if those in the audience here had wished to speak, the city clerk will call up the speaker cards, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. There is a timer that I believe is what, going to be on the laptop, or is it being seen?
It will be displayed on the screen.
Okay, so it'll tick down, so it'll just remind you of the time. And you're welcome to take up to 3 minutes. You don't have to, but again, we'll start with those in the audience, and then we'll go to Zoom. So at this time, we're going to open it to the public, and if I could please have the first speaker.
First in-person speaker is Jeremy Butler.
Good evening, City Council. I'm a homeowner and resident on Oxford Lane for 25 years now. When I purchased my home, there was no notice or disclosure stating that I could not park in front of my home, or there was potentially, there could be some parking issues. Not being able to park in front of my home is a huge inconvenience. So as a concerned homeowner in that area, I'm asking you to oppose this resolution as it's been brought here tonight. During the 25 years I've lived on Oxford Lane, I've not heard or seen an incident where emergency vehicles and first responders are not able to access any of the homes or buildings there. This actually includes my own home. We had a medical emergency about a year ago, and there was no issue there. One of my neighbors also had an emergency. Again, no issue there. I know we do have some residents, as we saw in some of the pictures there, that do currently park illegally. They stick out from the garage, park in the current red zones that are there. We have some over 72 hours. We even have an expired registration once in a while. I don't see any of that being enforced. So I think that's option one, is we need to enforce that. If we can, whether it's with our community group that I didn't know we had in Oxford Lane there, of course, San Bruno PD. The other consideration, I think, on Oxford Lane anyway, is across from the single-family homes, you have 2 parking spaces on one area and then an island with one spot. My understanding is part of the issue is emergency getting into the actual homes, like with a gurney or something, with the cars being parked too close to the single-family homes. My thought is if you were to take those couple spaces out across the street and either extended the curb a bit to make a sidewalk, or even just painted a buffer line so cars would park, that whatever it is, 4 feet, 5 feet, whatever it is, in a traditional home, then you could get emergency personnel into the home very easily, without being inconvenienced. And I think you would still keep the width of the street, as whatever the restriction is there, if you took out those 3 spaces on the other side. At least that would help in somewhat. I know you have issues down on like Acacia and Cypress, with these very narrow streets. So I know has to be sometimes some give and take. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Carmen Cabin.
afternoon. Can you hear me? Great. I've been a resident over at 120 Oxford Lane for the last 9 years. And when I first got there, there wasn't very many cars. As time has progressed, there's been a lot of families that have moved in and moved out, whatever the case may be. There's additional vehicles out there. My question is, does it really make sense to paint Oxford Lane, either the red or the peach? Where would we park? I mean, every household has 2 to 3 cars. So with this proposal, it puts us at, for the ones that work long hours, you come home and there's no parking. Where do you park? You know, so for me, I oppose for them to stripe our street. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Mike Gutierrez.
Hi, guys. First of all, was there supposed to be notification to our community before this meeting? Because we went out today to try to roust interest in this meeting, and not a single person, and after knocking on 30 or 40 doors this afternoon, got a notice from the city that this meeting was happening tonight. 2 months ago, I sent this to all the parties that this is a petition signed by 77 residences in Darby and Oxford Lane opposing this maneuver. What these guys have just mentioned are the mathematics they're using. I just need to see these because they're just not true. When they propose doing what they're doing right now, they're going to take 40 spots away from Darby and at least 60 from Oxford Lane. That's 100 parking spots that cannot be recovered. And the 2.75 is just a fictitious number. It's not true. When I talked to the Traffic Sergeant Page in previous meetings with you guys, it's been clear that they don't ticket cars blocking driveways and blocking and parking parallel in front of their driveways. I've been living there for 30 years. Our family's owned our building for 40, and there's a sign right at the top of our street at Darby that says parallel parking only, and that's what we have been doing for 55 years since this association has had these properties. Everybody parks that way, and it's critical parking for our community. It would be a death knell to all the people who are living there not to have someplace to park their cars. If you are forced to park on Crestmore, it's the most unpoliced area in the city where people are vandalized constantly, and no one looks forward to doing that. 16 years ago, my dad was the HOA president for 30 years. He retired from that position 10 years ago. But 15 years, I've gone through their minutes. I was part of the people that were getting the city council to vote and make changes 16 years ago. The changes we were doing 16 years ago, we came in saying every one of those cars that were parked at the end of Darby, perpendicular, the 8 spots perpendicular into the curb, that association property, other people would park right behind those cars and often not associated with the car in front of them. We would call the San Bruno Police Department and say, could you tow that car? He's blocking me in. And they would say, no, unless we tow every single car blocking every driveway up and down both sides of your Darby place. That's why we complained. And the result of this, they re-striped the Darby to put 4 cars on a diagonal. It didn't stop anything. My time is almost up. We have been there for 30 years. There's never been an issue with a fire truck, Amazon, AT&T, San Bruno Cable making a turnaround on Darby Place. It's never been a problem. And the only time it's almost a problem is when we call you guys, not you guys, but the San Bruno Police Department, and we say, we see a problem existing. And when people would park in their driveways where their tail ends would stick out 5 feet further from the curb than other parallel parking cars, leaving as little as 9 feet between their 2 bumpers, that's when we feel there's something dangerous. And to correct all the conversation about, they keep talking about Darby and Oxford having 20-foot wide streets. They're 36 feet from curb to curb. Cypress is 28. Elm is 28. There's every other street in San Bruno is less than 30, and we're 36.
Thank you. And again, I know it's a lot to say in a short time, just trying to keep it for everyone so everyone gets equal opportunity and time. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Carol Gutierrez.
Hi, I'm Carol Gutierrez. I'm a second grade public school teacher and a mother of 3, and I'm also very much against that peach curb. I live at the very end, and when I get home from school, there is nowhere to park but in front of my driveway, and that would stop me from parking in front of my driveway. That would make me have to be all the way out on Crestmore with the broken glass and the people selling drugs and all the stuff out there, and carry everything all the way to the end of the court. I mean, it gives me a lot of stress to even think about it. I've never seen any problem with any fire truck turning around. I sit on my couch and I can see everybody turning around. When we see people being inconsiderate and parking perpendicular, we were asking the police for help and they didn't know what to do. So that was the beginning of this whole big problem, was when we were saying that is not safe, we need to move those cars, but because they thought it was private, they didn't know what to do, and now we're dealing with these stressful meetings and all the red curbs, which woke everybody up. It woke up homeowners to tell people, you can't do that. These were new tenants during COVID, inconsiderate. We would try to even walk up to them and say, hey, you guys can't do that because we need to have a fire truck be able to get around, you know? We are always there trying to help the court, and there's nice people there. Most of them are considerate. People have learned, but now we have this problem instead. The perpendicular parking was the problem, and the police not knowing what to do. All these parallel parking spaces is what everybody uses. That's what we've been doing for years. If we lose them, that is going to be a big deal. And would someone call the police on me for parking in front of my driveway because of the red curb? You know, you called them sidewalks, but they're not really sidewalks. There's like a little piece of a sidewalk, a driveway, a little piece of a sidewalk, a driveway. No one has ever walked on it like a sidewalk that needs to be clear for someone with a wheelchair or anything like that. It's just kind of a different, weird place. And we've been doing fine for over 30 years, as long as I've lived there. We've never had a problem. So unless you live there, you don't really understand how it all works, but we've lived there for 30 years, and this is going to cause more of a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Gio Aguilar.
Hello, Council. In about 2020, there was a gas leak at Darby Place. We called the fire department. We had like 3-4 trucks in there, and there was never a problem. They came in, took care of the situation. We had to close part of the side of the street for a while because the gas leak had to get fixed, but there was no problem with them coming in and out of Darby Place. There's no issues as long as everybody doesn't park. If they park perpendicular, it becomes an issue because it takes away a little bit of the road. But if everybody parks horizontal, blocking their driveway, there's no issues. You know, like I've been there for going on 10 years, living at Darby Place, and I've never seen an issue with the fire truck coming in and out of that. So I'm also a father of 3, so not having parking will definitely, hinder where else are we going to park, right? Why go to extreme actions when we already have a parking ambassador? I guess we have one, according to the guy who was speaking here earlier. If we have somebody that can help us park correctly or just let us know, like, hey, you're parking illegally, please fix your car, because we have a lot of people that do that and might as well take care of that. Also, how does this benefit you if you don't live there, right? Like, you're only hurting the people that live there because now you're taking all their parking spaces away. I've been there for 9 years and we've had plenty of fire trucks come in and out, and I've never seen or heard any problems with them coming in and out of our cul-de-sac. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Ferris Zummit.
Hello. So my name is Ferris Zummit. I just finished serving a couple years in the United States Air Force. I have lived to take more parking away from us. And the only people that this is going to affect is the middle to lower class working people. And I thought the council was supposed to be fighting for those people. Y'all got elected to protect us and help us. And living in the Bay Area is hard enough. So like, why add stress to everybody that's like trying to fight for parking spots or have to walk a far distance up and down the hills just to get to their cars, to work 2 jobs out here. Like everybody's working. And this is the same people that you're trying to help, but these are the same people that heard all the pros and cons and they're still voting against it. So we understand the issue and we still don't want it. Excuse me. This is also going to take time from the police department. They could be doing so many other things around the community other than policing the families that live here. And to the fire marshal, I understand wanting to do your job efficiently, and those cars are going to get in your way. But even if this does pass, it's not going to guarantee people won't park in those red lines. It's just going to ticket those families. And the number of parking spots that they were counting earlier, those were like estimates because they were counting garages, and not everybody uses their garage as a parking spot. That's also storage for a lot of people. So, and those rooms, so there could be more people in those houses. In my 20 years of living here, this is possibly the biggest waste of time and money I've seen. And the only people it's going to affect are the people that don't want it. And it's all these small families. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and thank you for your service. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Chris Obermeyer.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. So far, I agree with all the points that my neighbors have presented. Agree 100%. Quick question, I'm going to paraphrase. I believe, nice little system, everything's set up just fine. I just find it interesting that a city government official wants to recommend what I should do with my garage, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. That's it, that's my comment.
Next speaker.
Next
Hold on.
Renaud.
Okay. So are there, I just want to go, is there anybody in here that had wished to speak, maybe didn't turn in a card? Because once I go to the Zoom, we're not going to come back. So this is the last opportunity here. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. With that, we will now move to Zoom.
Next remote speaker is Tom Garcia. Tom Garcia, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Sorry, I didn't realize the mute button popped up. Anyway, thank you, honorable city officials of San Bruno. Tom Garcia, I'm a fourplex owner, and I'm requesting the city to leave the parking issues at Oxford Lane and Darby Place as they have been for the last approximate 57 years, under the control of the association itself. Recently, about 3 owners in the 94-unit complex have pushed to have the city regulate parking on these 2 streets. The issues mainly have focused on a tenant parking 2 to 3 limousines on association parking spots on Darby Place, and someone parking a not-so-pretty old taxi on Oxford Lane. These issues would be best be left in the hands of the association. The association had an open meeting on 9/15 of 22, and the city's meeting, of course, on 10/4 of 22. The meetings yielded more owners objecting to the city's plan on how to handle the parking issues than supporting the city's plan. Most felt that the parking issues should be handled internally versus by the city. Both owners and tenants are likely to lose more parking benefits than are to be gained if the city takes parking on Oxford Lane and Darby Place. The red striping would make it illegal for owners and tenants to park in front of their own properties. That has no effect on anybody else. We should be allowed to park in front of our own driveways. The changing of curb parking from being exclusively for Oxford Lane and Darby Place owners and tenants would make the parking open to all of the general public, including anyone who drives in before flying out of this area. This will be a tremendous loss to owners and tenants and may adversely affect the value of the properties to future buyers and tenants. The streets of Oxford Lane and Darby Place have been owned and managed by the association for as long as I can remember. I purchased around 1978 and probably since 1965 per a developmental map. Furthermore, given that there isn't a full set of sidewalks on these two streets, the builders in the city probably never intended for the city to be burdened by disagreements about parking. Parking issues that some have raised can be handled by the association and would be best to do so versus the city. I respectfully request that Oxford Lane and Darby Place stay under the control of the association. P.S. Disclosures, I am a part of the Skyline Park HOA board, but I am expressing my concerns as an owner, not as the board member. Also, Jeremy's concern about the islands out there eating up some of the space on Oxford. There are two of them. It might be a good idea to reduce the size of those two islands so we don't have to put the red stripes like in front of his house. So that's a good thing that I think should be reconsidered. Okay, I'm out of time, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Tina Yim. Tina Yim, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I'm speaking for my partner right now. Okay, thank you. So I've been living here for a couple years. I don't know much about the Darby side but as far as Oxford's concerned, the street isn't that narrow. The picture made it look very narrow, and for some reason, it's not that at all. It's not that tight because there have been firefighters that have come here with no problem. Sorry, I just have it all written down. There are multiple access points for the firefighters from both the front and the back, and most of the apartments. And if you drive through, it's possible to loop around and exit. With the garage that we have during the time we've been staying here, we've made a deal with the owner that doesn't give us full access to the whole parking spot. I'm pretty sure there's a couple people that are probably with that same situation. And some parking isn't accessible due to being too steep, which means we can't even get in there. Our cars would scratch on the bottom and just do a lot of damage. The 2.75 number is not accurate at all, just because a lot of the times when we try to park in the middle at night when I come home from work, there's no parking at all. And I don't really want to park in Crestmore Avenue just because I know that there's a lot of people that sleep out there in their cars, and God knows what they're doing in the middle of the night. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Robert Marcelino. Robert, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely am disopposed to the red lines and all that stuff, because I just from the guy that spoke before, I also live in an apartment that have a very steep driveway, and I cannot get into my driveway without scratching the bottom of my car. I will bottom out and will ruin my vehicle. So I have no option. The only parking is my driveway that I could park in. And also, for people with electric cars, where are they supposed to charge their cars? Because some of us rely on power out of the garage to charge our electric cars. So that would make it really hard for a lot of families here. And my father actually was taken out in a stretcher a few years back, and the fire department had no problem accessing it here and getting in and out. So I don't know why to change all this right now. Also, also the number of parkings they're saying that is available for the 2.7 per unit is definitely not right, because you're going to be taking away so many driveways. So that's going to be eliminated so many parking spots. And everybody's going to be fighting for parking out in Crestmore, which Crestmore is already packed and there's already theft and drugs being used out there. So it's just going to make so much more chaos than helping anything at all. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Kristen LaRosa. Kristen, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I live on Darby Place. My family has owned 141 Darby, and I've lived here for 33 years. We've owned this apartment for over 45 years. We have had many, many, many opportunities for fire trucks and ambulances and police vehicles and many, many cars come around our street, and there's never been an issue. There's never been an incident. There's never been an emergency that couldn't be addressed. And I've seen many instances of fire trucks turning around by new firefighters, not the veteran firefighters, but they make the turn easily, and they may have to back up a few feet if they don't angle it just right. But I've seen two fire trucks pass each other with cars on each side, and there's never, ever been an issue. We have one of the widest streets in San Bruno. This whole thing started as a homeowners association issue when two renters, not owners, two renters were parking perpendicularly and causing problems for our neighbors. All we wanted was for a police officer to talk to these people and say, hey, you know what, you're parking illegally, you're causing problems for your neighbors, you really can't do that. Can you please just, park appropriately? And somehow that simple request has ballooned into this massive craziness where it's been redlined this and red curb that, and no one is really knows the situation except for the people who live around Darby. As an owner, I tell my tenants that we're not allowed to park, don't park in the driveway unless you're going to be in and out for a few minutes. We are really good at policing our own tenants. Also, my concern is, where's my plumber going to park? Where's my handyman going to park? Where's my 80-year-old mother park? She already has to walk up through 3 flights of stairs to get my apartment, but she can't walk 4 blocks. There's no parking. Even on Crestmore Drive, it's all taken up. And towards the end of the evening, it's all taken up by people who live in Crystal Springs apartments because they are massively have very few parking. So they're all parking on Crestmore. There's broken glass, there's homeless people sleeping over at the end, and I know the city thinks they're gone, but they're still there. Where are these people supposed to park? It's just, like I say, I've been here 35 years and we've never had an instance. And thank you for listening to me. I also have my neighbor who lives across the street and she doesn't have a computer and she would like to speak also. Bella, do you want to say something?
Yes. Hi, my name is Bella Forster and I live on 150 Darby Place for 45 years. And when I had to call for ambulance when my husband was alive, we never had any problems. Now I'm going to the age that if you put a red sign, floor over there, line, and I have health issues, what do I supposed to do? Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Michael Alberton. Michael, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. Hey, first I'd like to thank everybody in Oxford and Darby for being an advocate on keeping the parking as it is. And then Carol and Mike Gutierrez, thanks for the last minute going around trying to get people, because I didn't even know about it until I had to go to a meeting tonight and I got on a Zoom call here. But I've been at 111 Darby Place since 1999. I've seen the there's more cars, of course, but I've never seen where, like, I've seen fire, like the gentleman brought up the thing about the gas leak we had a couple years ago, and they had, 3 fire trucks in here, PG&E, and there was no problems. I see people, my next door neighbor got young kids, they're like in strollers and stuff. And I mean, if they're going to have to park on Crestmore, what they got to do, haul everybody across the street to get here? And even getting out on Crestmore, like, good points, there's a lot of cars getting broken into now. Broken glass and stuff like that. There's been a couple issues, like I said, that one previous person talked about. There was an issue a while back, and this whole thing got blown up. And so I'm against any changes at not only Darby and Oxford, because I've been here and I haven't seen it. Luckily, I'm by myself, and I just think it's going to inconvenience a lot of people who live here, especially like people coming home real late at night. You got people with the cars that are really low to the ground. You know, it's like the new thing, and scraping the driveway. I actually know what they're talking about. So I would like to see everything stay the way it is. I think. Well, what would really be nice sometime if we could ever get these two areas, the roads resurfaced, you know, like with asphalt, you know, like, because since I've been here, that's never happened. So they're kind of rough. It's almost like semi-gravel now in some areas. So my rant's over. I'm against any changes in Oxford and Darby. And thanks for everybody's time, and especially the people who live up here that took the time out to get on the call or go to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Nizreen. Nizreen, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hey everyone, good evening. I would just like to say the same thing as everybody else has been saying. I've been here for 11 years. I've never seen any issue where emergency vehicles have been unable to get in and out of Darby Place. I was also here during the gas leak, and as you guys have already heard, there were 2 or 3 fire engines in here. There was PG&E, no issues whatsoever. And even at that time, there was a lot of people who were parking their cars perpendicular, and it was just fine. There was no other issues. I am completely against parking on Crestmore. I have been a victim twice of a hit and run that caused total loss on 2 of my vehicles. They were stretched out between 2 years. But I don't want to park my cars on Crestmore. I don't want to have another hit and run. I have children. I come home. I have things that I need to bring in and out of my car. I just don't think it's a good idea to change any of the parking over here. I already think it's already a mess. It's just going to become more inconvenient for everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Leanne Minkle. Leanne, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi there. I'm actually a nurse in San Francisco, and I sometimes go into work. I leave here at 2:30 in the morning and head up to San Francisco. So for me, if I'm unable to park in front of my garage, if my boyfriend is staying here and he's parked in the garage, I have to walk out onto Crestmore, and as everybody else has stated, that all of the break-ins and the drugs and everybody else that's sleeping out there, that's really unsafe for me. Also, if I have to stay over until 11:30 at night, finding parking at the same time is also really unbelievable, again, like Crystal Springs. We also have had people staying up into the fields behind where AT&T or Comcast or whatever the PG&E is behind there. I think that's fixed, but at the end of the day, I think it's just very unsafe for all of us not to be able to have parking in front of our places. That is it. Also, I have Sierra here, who is also another member that lives here.
Hi, my name is Sierra. I also live on Darby. I've lived here, this is my 4th year, and I can attest, I came from Crystal Springs Terrace, and we were very overcrowded over there, so we did all tend to park on Crestmore. Oftentimes, all of our cars were broken into, not only broken into, many times things were left in our cars from drug usage and things like that. We are encouraged by our landlord to use our garages and only park in front of our garages if we're going to be home for a brief period of time. When I get home, maybe I will go grocery shopping right after and leave, or my son might have karate or something like that, so it's brief. We have never had any issues. As mentioned before, during COVID, we did get evacuated due to a gas leak. Many cars were in front of their garages. We had fire trucks, as mentioned, many PG&E, a lot of construction work. We were all safely evacuated. Everything was done what needed to be done safely. I've also witnessed fire trucks, ambulances, Amazon trucks, moving vehicles, making that turn down there. There's never been an issue. On the weekends, many times I'm only getting off of work at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm a single mother. My mom, who is also getting into the elderly stage, watches my son overnight. If there is not something available for her, she does not have access to my garage, I do not want her parking on Crestmore. It is not safe. I myself, every weekend, come home and there is weird things going on at 2:30, 3:30 in the AM that are not safe. So I do not agree with this. I don't think that those are the issues. I agree, as people have mentioned, it's only the issues when people are parking straight out, poking out, that has been the cause. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you both for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Brian M. Brian, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Yeah, good evening. How are you doing? My name is Brian Muldowney. I'm a resident of Darby Place, and I live approximately in the center of Darby Place. Like I said, I'm a resident. I live on the street for the last 23 years, so I have witnessed what everybody else has said with the emergency vehicles, moving vehicles, and Amazon delivery trucks. Our street is 35 feet wide. I think Mike said it was 36, but anyway, we're within a foot of each other. And the average car, if it's parked parallel, is approximately 6 feet. So both sides, 12 feet, 12 and 35. That's 21 feet of space for any kind of vehicle that needs to move up and down. I'm not going to tell the fire department what they're supposed to do or how to do their job, but I have seen the vehicles come in and exit without any incident. This street, as mentioned at the start by one of the people hosting this meeting, said it's a unique street, and it certainly is a unique street. When I moved in, I was not informed that I could not park in front of my house. There are parking signs for parallel parking only, and for the 23 years that I've lived here, parking has always been a problem with people parking irresponsibly. This has been brought to the board's attention on multiple times, and I'm one of those people who multiply tells the board about parking. With the unique part of the street, we had a lot of dialogue with the police department and the city about ownership of the city and who is going to enforce the rules. It's in my opinion that if the board had done their proper diligence and done their work, that this would not have come about. We need a simple parking policy to tell owners that they could not park perpendicular or parking two cars abreast of each other. And like I said, if the board had done their jobs, maybe we wouldn't be in this position today, because people just don't park properly. Okay, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Lou. Lou, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hello, I'm Lou Nasser. I live on 110 Oxford Lane. I have been living here for almost 17 years. I bought the house a little bit before I got married. I'm raising two kids, and my mother lives with me as well. She is 73 years old, and for her to walk from Crestmore to my house to the place where I live would be very difficult for her. I also believe that the driveway is also mine, that I pay taxes on. So putting a red line on my driveway would be illegal itself, since I own my own driveway. And I wanted to say that we've been living here. Well, I've been living in San Bruno for 47 years. Rico Medina, I've known him since I was 13 or 14 years old. And I wanted to say, guys, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And have a good one.
Thank you for your comments and making me feel young. Next speaker, please.
There are no other remote hands raised.
Okay, last call for the remote hands. Okay.
No hands are raised.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everybody's patience and comments this evening. One thing I think, I want to bring it back to the colleagues, but just on the question that came up a couple times to staff as far as notification. When was it notified? What was the radius, or just et cetera? Just so we clear that up, because I think that was something I heard from a couple speakers. Please. Director Lee.
Through the mayor, staff mailed the notices out on April 14th, but we did receive a message today from a member on Darby Place that said they did not receive the notice until this Sunday. So I'll have to look into maybe what happened through the mailing process for those documents, or what happened in the process of the mailing. But staff physically mailed them out on April 14th.
And that would be to Oxford and Darby?
Yes, to both residents on Darby and Oxford Place.
And this is just I don't expect a response. I'm taking notes, and I've heard not just a couple, but several commentary in regards to Crestmore Drive and activity and or occurrences that have happened or are happening. So I would just encourage through the city manager and others, assistant, to maybe observe, look, and see what's going on. That's just a general comment. I also want to, I've heard some comments that, what we have wanted is for the police department to respond to try to take care of certain situations that arose that needed those citations or please move. And I understand that I'm hearing from the public that there was confusion. I'm going to assume, my thought is that because it was technically private, an HOA, that does not give the authority to the city to enter in and to do citations and or that type of traffic control. Do you know if that's correct or?
For that question, I will bring up Acting Chief Brandenburg.
Yes, Mayor. The vehicle code is restricted for certain sections on private property. In the past, Darby has been considered a private road prior to the latest staff research. So a fire lane code, if properly signed, can be enforced on private property. And Darby has never been signed for fire lanes. It's always been calls for blocking driveways and blocking the roadway, which is all a vehicle code violation, which is not enforceable on private property.
Which could add to the confusion of not responding, not completely clear, which is obviously it took some investigation work to figure out that it is now city street, whether it's paving, whether it's having traffic control of citations if it's clearly defined.
Correct, just like the sign that staff showed of the private property, we would typically direct on private property to have the HOA, start some enforcement action, including towing vehicles based on their rules, but not involve city or city staff to do that since it's private.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get, I had more, but I wanted to get a few of those immediate questions because I heard them come up a few times and just wanted some clarity. Comments, questions from colleagues? And I'll let some others go and then I'll come back. Councilmember Medina, please.
Sure. Thank you. The one thing I heard at a number of different times from our residents is the number of parking spaces. So I don't want to go have a back and forth, but in the staff report and in the presentation, there's a certain number, and if they're off by that much, then we probably should return to find out what that number is. And also the width of the street seemed to be a contentious thing, that the numbers, if they don't match. So I just want to make sure, like, staff did go out there and the basis of this determination that, nobody's pulling numbers out of the air. It's based on some research.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding that to be a question, so again, for further clarification, the 2.75 parking spaces per unit was the response to council's question to count the off-street parking spaces, which include the driveways that have the allowable depth, and then for the garages that many residents have said that they've used for storage. And so that's what that count is for. I think people may be misconstruing it with actual public on-street spaces. The thing that further confuses it, if we recall back to the one slide for the two streets, there's those blue areas, which are private property, which is part of now the HOA's parking program. Those are solely on the HOA's property and their parking spaces. Those are also part of that count. And so that's how the 2.75 parking spaces were accounted for. In terms of the actual width of spaces, there may be areas on Darby Place that are 36 feet in width, but there are also areas that are a little narrower. And because of the narrowness of that width and allowable parking space widths of 8 feet, if you go below 36 feet, you can literally only have parking on one side and still meet the fire code. And so that's why you see on the proposed red curb, we're not proposing the red curb everywhere. We're trying to preserve as much parking as we can. And there's also the red curbs that are coming in front of driveways are for the vehicles that are potentially parking in the driveway and
about the enforcement side. So if somebody was sticking out a couple feet, doesn't need to be a red curb for that to be a violation. And now that we know that it is a public street, that the police department, based on their availability at that time, could come out and enforce it. And the curb doesn't have to be red, there doesn't have to be a line, but that's an enforceable action that we have clarity now.
For that question, I'll ask Acting
Understood.
Chief Brandenburg to come up and answer.
It's a complicated answer, sorry, but yes, you cannot extend your vehicle into a public roadway. I believe the code says over 6 inches. So yes, it could be cited, and that's the.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm very familiar with the Avenue streets, and I thought 7th Avenue or 7th Street in particular is a very narrow road. It looks like a one-way, but it's not. And looking at the parcel map, it's actually 60 feet wide, whereas the Darby Place, it's only 20.5 feet each way, which makes it 40 feet wide. So I can see the concern of, what the staff report shows, that it's a narrower than typical width of the street. I think there's a way that, if there's a way that we can implement the red zone without taking away that pre-assigned parking space when it was originally built. So it doesn't give a lot of burden to the residents, taking away some of the parking spot. Thank you.
Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. So, so going back to the question about the street width, and thank you, Councilmember Alvarez, for pointing out the comparison with some of the other streets, but I was also under the impression that there's a lot of streets in the city that seem extremely narrow, and it's almost impossible for 2 cars to go down at the same time. And so in these particular streets, we're saying that these are that much narrower that that you couldn't easily navigate down the center. And I understand that there are codes, and there's also, we've heard a lot of examples of just empirical data that the trucks can function, and so it's trying to reconcile those two things, right? Whether there's the code that may have some additional buffer, and what's practical and safe, there might be a little room to play with that, and so I'm just wondering if that is that hard of a criteria. Do we have some flexibility? Are there other places where we have similar constraints that are not addressable? And is this unique, or is this like we just happen to be dealing with this one because it got on our radar because of complaints?
Thanks for the question, Councilmember Salazar, through the mayor. As we described in the PowerPoint presentation, it's not just the actual street width. We talked about the totality of the area itself and how it was originally planned. Looking at the application, there was not, it didn't seem like there was anything that explored kind of the on-street parking, as you would say. And because of the setback is why the city's recommending to propose red curbing the certain portions of both those streets.
And it seems that one of the things that put this on our radar was the fact that we discovered that it was in fact a public street, not a private road. If this were a private road, would we be having this conversation at all? And I guess my follow-up question to that would be, if the city were to abandon its right to the property and deed it back over to the homeowners association, would then they be responsible for dealing with those issues?
So that's a good question. I would say that I would have to bring up Fire Marshal Gage Slice to talk about public and private roads and how the fire code applies for those locations.
Fire Marshal?
So I have an easy answer. The code doesn't address public or private roads. It just says the minimum fire width of a fire access road shall be 20 feet. And that allows for one vehicle, so if the fire engine pulls up to a hydrant, hooks up to the hydrant to get water, another fire engine could pass past it in case the fire is past the fire itself. So the whole point is to be able to have two fire trucks be able to pass at the same time, because the one that's hooked up to the fire hydrant can't easily move and unhook from the fire hydrant to get past that particular residence.
And that's an interesting case scenario there, because I believe on.
Go the opposite direction.
You would come around the other way. Okay. All right. Great point. All right.
Okay, there you go. Set up close. That was some of my thought, because obviously this topic came up because there were complaints. And so just like code enforcement, when something comes forward, the city has to respond and react. Doesn't go looking for it, but has to respond to it. So that's how all of this evolved. And that's how it was going back in the records. And that was going to be my path too, is it has been this way for decades, because it was assumed it was HOA and it was private, and then therefore really this topic didn't come up. Only because of that, and yes, it came up before, and we as a council said, hey, let's go back and let's redefine, re-understand. And I mean, you know, I could think of a spot here, a spot there. I was there Sunday afternoon, I was there this afternoon, I was there this evening before the meeting, just to kind of get an understanding and feeling, and sure, it's crowded. And I know that I think most streets will tell you that if you go back 10 years ago to today, it is just the house car volume has increased. People are living at the homes or having to be caregivers, and so you have additional persons at the homes. So I think what some of the main concerns are is about in front of their homes. One speaker said that it shouldn't be an issue because I own the driveway. The driveway is truly that, but once it exceeds into the sidewalk by 6 inches, or we believe about 6 inches, that's when it becomes not okay, which impedes the flow of individuals, whether ADA, strollers, et cetera. However, some folks that I saw, park in front of their garage. So you could walk by in between the garage and the car, and there's that access. I'm thinking of Darby specifically right now. And if I do go across, I did see cars that were in front of where a gurney would want to pull up and have good access to go up the staircase. And I think that's some of the concerns I have heard from folks is, if there were that emergency and we needed to get up to the second or third floor quickly, and that car is in front of the staircase, that impedes the response time. And obviously that's critical. I'm kind of going around, but I'm trying to figure out if there's a way, because what I'm hearing from the fight to do so. So you bring forward to us and say, here's the code. This is what we need to meet. And so I'm trying to understand between us collaborating how we can ensure public safety and make sure the response. I was there for the gas leak. Myself and City Manager Grogan stood on the apartment over the fence and watched it. I would say it wasn't far into Darby, so that made it a little more accessible and easy. If it had been all the way inside of Darby, it might have been a little more daunting. To my knowledge, too, we didn't have to utilize the fire hoses. It was because it was a gas leak. So I'm trying to understand, where do you think the city and the community can maybe find some way in which to assist in this parking element and also bring the safety that the staff feels is necessary? It's a loaded question. It's a lot said. And I'll give you a moment or call whom you wish.
I guess I'll call on myself. That is a very complex question, and staff has put a lot of thought to it. We really did try to see if there was any other potential areas since October, and that's where we went to the HOA management and discussed different actions that they could possibly take. And some they were not receptive to, and some that they were. Examples would be the ambassador parking program, which I think some of the speakers talked to, like they do want to try to police themselves. The parking permit program itself as well, because I think the HOA management has been kind of when this was understood as a private street, kind of trying to manage this effort as well. And so, in short, I think the recommendation with the additional actions by the HOA management is kind of where we landed as staff.
And I can appreciate that, and it is complex, what I was saying. But even on Oxford, if somebody is parked in their driveway, which again, we know the driveway doesn't have the length, we know that. However, I don't even see, a year or so ago, I had a house that kind of had a major fire. And so, yeah, one fire truck, but yes, you're correct. The fire chief, they came at different angles and can get through. So are we saying that would be ticketed? That vehicle that's parked partially on the driveway, which obviously is going into, I'll call it a part of the roadway, would that be ticketed, or would that still be permitted? That doesn't, to me, that doesn't impede the fire apparatus, because they're not that far into the roadway, if that makes sense, my question.
The short driveways where the cars have to overhang because of the distance, if they overhang beyond the fire lane red curb, is that citable?
It's fair.
Chief Brandenburg?
And I know somebody would need to probably complain, and that's what would precipitate it, but would that be citable?
I think it really depends on what we determine from Public Works and the staff reports to talk about if it's a sidewalk. There's regulations on that in the vehicle code. What is it, the roadway? Where is the city property line goes? So I think it's a citation when someone complains or when we're doing proactive enforcement. I mean, there's always an element of discretion that we try to level and use in these situations, because they are very complex. So it's very complicated. And sorry, I'm not really answering your question, but there's a lot of factors that go into those determinations to cite or not cite by the officer or CSO that responds to that given situation.
Thank you, and I know it's not one fits all, and I get that. I was just thinking that I think that's an element that would be helpful to Darby and Oxford to have that, as I've seen it then and now. And I just didn't know if that's something that could be done to try to assist in that endeavor. So I'm going to stop because I've been talking for a while. So any other comments or questions from colleagues? Councilmember Alvarez and then Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just trying to, I know that we were trying to implement the code, but have we looked into the exception on the code? Looking at the 41 feet wide Darby Street without taking away the guest parking. I know that there may be something, a way around it. If we were to mark one side of the Darby place, which leaves us 30 feet, and there's another space on the other side for the fire engine to go in and back in and out of the street without, I just don't see the visibility of turning the fire engine around that cul-de-sac. So if we could see an exception to the code that we're trying to implement, I think it would help the residents to at least ease up the, the parking situation.
I'm going to attempt to restate the question and have fire specifically for just the cul-de-sac and the turnaround, if there's any exemptions or exceptions in the code that allow us to remove some of the red curbing there, understanding that Darby Place itself, the proposed red curbing is generally on one side of the street, to allow for that currently. I'm seeing a head nod, so I think that's the question. Fire Marshal Gage Slice, can you come up?
Yeah, Councilmember Alvarez, I'm trying to understand the question a little further. So the red curbing was proposed to be only on the city part of the property of the cul-de-sac. And
Yeah,
it's to
on
help
Darby
remind
Place.
people who can still park in the approved parking spaces, but it's there really to remind people that they can't double park behind each other.
On the presentation, part of 1, 2, 3 stalls are being marked red,
At the
which
very,
means that they cannot park there?
added at a separate time, and those impeded on to the public property, the public road itself. So those were being removed. One stall was being removed, and the other one was, half of it was being removed for either a smaller vehicle or motorcycle parking, because those particular stalls were on the public roadside.
It doesn't show here on the, I don't know, I think I'm just not clear with the explanation, because the way it was marked on the presentation, that we're marking inside the 3 stalls on the cul-de-sac.
Are you looking at the parcel map?
Not the parcel map, it's the peach line.
Yeah,
That
it
was
looks,
marked.
it has a better designation of where the public property and the private property separates on the part.
Slide 15.
So on slide 15, there's the parcel map, and they kind of overlaid the public property from the private property, and those 2 stalls overlapped onto the public property.
Yeah, it's still 2 stalls, yeah. And then sort of like towards the end, because it's slanted on the 3rd stall, number B7.
So what we're trying to do is get as much width for the turnaround without taking away any of the parking spaces. And, we always plan for the worst case scenario. So you get, a contractor with a extra long truck parking there, and that would take away a lot of that turnaround radius on that particular cul-de-sac.
Yeah, so the question was, is there any exception to the explanation of what the code states?
So there is no exception for the code. Like a lot of times, as you know, you read all the code, the California building code, they all say 20 feet, and they all have a 96-foot cul-de-sac, and that's the international standard now. There is not an exception for that.
I just want to make sure that
Of
the
course.
staff looked into that
Oh, yes, of
exception
course.
as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. I wanted to know a little bit more about the parking program that you mentioned and how that's being managed, what it includes, since it's not our typical parking program.
Yeah, so it's the parking program managed by the HOA management, and I believe they adopted it sometime in March recently. What it does is, my understanding is that it provides parking placards and permits, a specific amount per unit, and it allows them to park in those blue spaces that are parking spaces that are on actual association's property. Because it's on their property, they have full control of it. They can tow whatever vehicle they want if it doesn't have those permits or whatnot. And so the parking program is administered and managed by the HOA, and it's through a parking placard.
And do we know if they issued a number of those that correspond to only the number of available spots, or?
Management, they indicated that there was a specific amount per unit. That's obviously if you see on the map, there's not enough HOA communal parking spaces for every unit. So there will probably be more permits than those particular shared parking spaces.
And would it be possible to work with the HOA to have them participate in a city-sponsored permit program that would designate a portion of Crestmore to be permit parking only and keep some of the other people out of the area and make those spots available for this community?
So in terms of the question, you're saying partner with the HOA. Can you clarify a little more what we're asking the HOA
so
to do?
we have our version of a permit program as well. And so given the constraints and, participation of, we can't be exclusive of, people that are immediately in the area, but if a portion of Crestmore that's currently just, open to anyone, if that were part of a permit program for only the people in the community, could that help alleviate the situation? I mean, it would generate parking that was designated for people that live in the community, and I'm just wondering if that's a potential solution, and if it might help with cars that are people that are living in cars that are parked there.
What I heard from a lot of the speakers was not that there was no parking spaces on that area. They were just concerned about the safety and the distance for walking. But speaking to the HOA in past conversations, they're very focused on what's their property and what they manage. Anything that is on public property, they expect the city to administer and manage.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any additional thoughts, comments, or direction? Councilmember Salazar.
I got to say, I'm really torn on this, and as I mentioned last time, the community came to us with a very specific problem to solve, and our solution was exactly what they don't want, and even without the noticing that there are some requirements. We're trying to impose modern codes on something that was designed completely differently. And we have people in the community that have basically invested in something with an understanding of what their rights and privileges were, and now we're changing that. And so I do have a lot of difficulty with imposing that. So I'm just not sure what the right answer is here.
Councilmember Medina?
You're exactly right, Councilmember Salazar. I mean, nobody wants to be talking about this right now, right? The council doesn't want to take away any parking spaces. That's not our intent. We're balancing a professional opinion of a code versus the intent of our residents, right? And it's not an easy solution. It's one or the other. It's pretty black and white from what the code says, and then it comes all down to liability. So how we could try to find ways to work with the HOA, that doesn't change the code. We're still not following the code. And the ability of changing the code is probably, I'm looking for like a nod or something over there from our, no. We're not going to be able to change the code. So what do we do? And everyone doesn't want any changes, right? So we have to find a way of balancing how we could minimize our liability and maintain the lifestyle that you all want to have. That's not easy. Staff has gone back and forth twice. If there was a way that we could add additional parking on site, I don't know what's behind that parking space on the very south end of Darby, but we're limited to what the configuration of how this development was approved, 60 years ago, right? 65 years ago, 68 years ago. So I wish there was a way to have a magical solution here, but we don't, Mr. Mayor, so I don't know exactly how to move forward. You know, we have a recommendation from our fire professionals saying one thing, and it's like, that's totally contrary to what the public wants. So I'll let that stand for a little bit.
Anything else at this time? Don't have to. Councilmember Salazar, sorry.
Is there a potential that changes could be implemented over time rather than immediately? So say if we were to give the residents just a warning that changes were coming, and rather than just, you know, flipping a switch and overnight what they've been doing for 20, 30 years is illegal, could it be phased in? Can we address some of the more concerning restrictions, like maybe, you know, taking away the spots and red striping the cul-de-sac, which clearly is a problem, and it was also a concern that the residents had, and then looking at phasing in some of the striping over time so that people do have an opportunity to acclimate to the changes before we impose them.
That's a very good question. I'll
You have the right to ask the city attorney to,
don't
get shy now.
I'll defer to the city attorney in terms of if it's possible for us to phase in the implementation of a fire code, and maybe if Fire Marshal Slice can chime in.
The city attorney has been wanting to join in the conversation.
Mayor Medina, I understand the question is before the city council about whether or not to adopt these parking restrictions. And I know of no reason, nothing that limits the exercise of your authority today on that. And so you could exercise your authority to approve it or not to approve it. I also think that you could do it if you wanted to do it in phases, you could. I don't think it changes the facts that staff have provided you for their reason for making the recommendation. It just changes the amount of time it's going to take to implement these changes, whether you do it immediately or you do it over a period.
So you know, probably half of the homes in San Bruno are not up to code because they were built so long ago. My home's probably included in that, and I know that we're not required to bring it up to code unless we change something. So as soon as we touch it, we have to bring it up to code. And so I'm thinking something in line with that, where you know, it's not drastic, and we can maybe do it over time. I would be I think I'd be a lot more comfortable with doing that. And you know, just looking at what we've seen tonight, and absolutely completely respect public safety's opinion on this. I totally understand where they're coming from, and we definitely want to get there. It's just that, you know, we have, like I said, people have been, you know, non-compliant now for decades. The rules have probably changed long ago. We're uncovering it now. We definitely want to get it fixed. But it seems like having this happen in this manner is, it imposes a lot of hardship on that community, and you know, I would really hate to do that to them when they came to us asking for help.
And one thing I reflect back is on Rosewood, and that is where something came before the council, been on a while, and they just like put all these red zones, and so staff recommendation, TSPC, traffic safety, and so staff did, and council said yes. So then it went out and got painted red. Well, that didn't work. There was other issues that arose, and so guess what? We took some of the red zone back. So to Councilmember Salazar's point is, to me, to have something that's been for decades, and people have, I think is daunting, and I think it's, you know, I don't want to say fair, because what staff's recommending is correct and accurate to bring forward. But phasing it in or having those, like the statement I had about the driveway element, you know, that still allows the apparatuses to get through. I think that's what the residents are looking for, is just, just all of a sudden have all of that eliminated at once is just a lot. And I know they're working with the HOA, and that's been embarked upon. But I think that there are maybe some other things we can do. No question that we've asked is simple. I know it's complex. You've all said that. I know the safety is an importance. As we sit up here, we have to ensure every part of this community is safe. And yes, I do understand. Had nothing been said, we all probably wouldn't be here tonight. Everybody would be home, getting ready for tomorrow's Warriors game and thinking positive thoughts. But in all honesty, here, so if we need to start to go down a path to have some compliance, I would like to see it more phased in myself, if that's the right word, personally. Councilmember Salazar. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Alvarez. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like what Councilmember Michael Salazar mentioned about legal conforming, when this development was built, it went through some zoning regulations and building regulations when it comes to what is the right width or appropriate width for the cars and the fire engine to go through within this properties. If we are not taking away what was given, like the parking situation or parking spaces for the tenants, I think I will support that. But I also support the safety of the residents. What entails the restriction of the street parking? I don't see the red mark, and also the appropriate size of where even a parking parallel, because I know for the enforcement perspective, I don't think you can park like parallel to your driveway. It has to be like you're pointing to correct me if I'm wrong, and that's what we see. If we allow the red marking on the other side, it will still allow the residents to park parallel to on the street, which I see on the Google map. It will not restrict the other side of the street to park parallel. And to me, is that even allowed? I keep circling back on the cul-de-sac because I think the Darby place will be able to park. Then what happens on the other side? I completely support the safety of the fire engine coming in because it's necessary, and if the code requires that, and I definitely support that. But the allowable parking that was provided originally when the development was built, I think, to me, shouldn't be taken away from the residents.
Any other questions or comments? None? Okay. So what I'm going to summarize what I'm hearing, and then Director Lee, you are very good at summarizing and making sure that we're all on track. I'm hearing from majority of the council, and doesn't mean it's not all of us, but I don't want to speak, is that yes, we know we need to have safety, and meeting code is a concern for the protection of everyone. We also have, the council has concerns about just our immediately having that initiated. During the council saying, what options are there? What opportunities are there in which to have what happens on other streets and congested areas? And I've brought up a couple of them. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from the council. Please correct me or if I've left something out. Okay. Now, with that, I'm looking to staff as to, okay, so what would be the next step? Because obviously we have a resolution for possible action or not action, but what we're doing is actually modifying the resolution that was provided in the packet. And I'd like to go to our interim city manager.
Certainly, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. If I'm understanding this properly, It sounds like a form of a phased approach towards implementing, heading towards red curbs, but not quite getting there yet. I will say I think staff has exhausted all other remedies. There are no good alternatives to this, which is why it's sitting in front of the council. This is something if we could have fixed, I think we would have. I am only 3 weeks in, so I don't have a lot of deep experience with these roadways, but I have visited them myself. And I will say, if I can help frame this a little bit differently, and one of the council members just made the comment, the protection isn't necessarily for our firefighters, although we're very worried about them and their access. It's really for these residents. The residents mentioned inconvenience. It's a greater inconvenience if we can't get to their site should there be a fire or a medical emergency. That's what we're trying to address here, and I think we're ready to actually move forward.
Any questions to the intermanager on what he summarized? Seeing none. Is there any action by council on the resolution and or with the modification to the resolution? Councilmember Salazar.
Chair, thank you.
Apologize.
So acknowledging everything that we've heard from staff and what we've heard from the residents, I will make a motion to approve the resolution, but understanding that we will not be implementing it immediately and that there will be input from staff on how we can phase this in and make it less impactful to the neighborhood.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion and a second. Is the motion clear to the clerk?
Can I just
Yeah,
seek some
absolutely.
clarity? Because if I'm working with staff to try to implement this, while we may not implement it tomorrow or next week, I think the question is, do we have the discretion as staff to ultimately make the decision when to move forward? And I guess that's where I'm trying to get with this is, I would prefer, and I think council would prefer that this not be back in front of you again. But if we start implementing, I think you'll hear from residents about, hey, we not quite yet. You didn't do enough steps. So I'm going to struggle a little bit with what are those steps we are hoping to take? What does that look like as good faith? Because I want to make sure we're doing this in good faith.
Right, the community and from the council on which pieces were going to be put in place. I'd like to see what impact the parking program is going to have on alleviating some of that. And I'd like the education component of what we're talking about to also continue, and so that the residents do understand that there is a concern if they park across the driveway and stick into the street, that is a massive safety issue. Blocking the driveways is also currently not permitted. It's not allowed. It could be ticketed. I think the residents should understand that as well, although it's a practice there. It's a practice we have in a lot of our neighborhoods. In fact, it's just a reality that there are far too many cars for the number of people, for the available spots, and so it happens everywhere. And so that's why I'm hesitant to impose it so heavy-handedly in this community, where we actually allow it in a lot of other places. And so, that's one part that I'd like to delay as much as possible. If we could focus on, I know that there are a number of what appear to be choke points within both of the streets. What we're doing in the cul-de-sac, we would definitely want to address, since the residents have the same concern that we do about people double stacking on those edges. So looking at those things that are least impactful to the community, but most impactful to safety, if we could prioritize those, and then.
It does, thank you.
Thank you. So with that into the motion, is that you want that encompassed? And is the seconder okay? Is the seconder okay with that? City Clerk, do you understand that motion, just for the recording purposes?
If I could read back what I wrote.
Sure.
But it's very brief. Motion to approve resolution not to implement it immediately, but to receive input from staff how to implement in phases.
Interim manager, is there anything else that needs to be added?
I would say maybe with an eye towards safety as being the priority thing we look at first, and then we can sort of steps.
So I think that's fine for the record.
Okay. And I see that, but with the motion, we have to go through the motion. It's a process. So there's a motion and a second, as read by the clerk with what's been clarified. Is there any question on that? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any noes? Any abstentions? So the modified resolution passes 4-0 with Vice Mayor Hamilton recused. And then we'll go ahead and take, Director Lee, before you wander off, I do want to thank staff, because what you did is, again, us asking a lot of clarifying questions. And so I don't want you or the team to think that that wasn't appreciated, acknowledged, and noticed, and you're doing your job, and we appreciate that. And I also want to thank the residents that were here tonight, that were on Zoom, and I appreciate everybody's courtesy, professionalism, and respect that everybody gave staff and the speakers. And so I want to thank you for that. With that, we'll take a 5-minute recess, and we'll allow Vice Mayor Hamilton to read. Colleagues, if you could head up to the front, please. Okay, we all ready? All right, let's reconvene the San Bruno City Council meeting, and we have concluded with conduct of business. We will move on to item 8, which is council committee report outs. Do we have any colleagues that wish to report out? Vice Mayor Hamilton.
You're going faster than I anticipated. I'm getting to my notes. Hang on a moment, please. Okay. All right. So this past weekend, I attended the 2023 San Mateo County Progress Seminar. It's an event where leaders from business, government, labor, and education from all across the county come together for solutions to the many problems that we jointly face. The focus topics this weekend included preparing for a zero-carbon future, challenges faced by workers and employers, and how we can make an impact on the housing crisis in the region. I found it incredibly valuable. It's my first time attending. It was great to connect with colleagues from across San Mateo County on these important topics, and I hope to be able to attend again.
Thank you. Other colleagues, report outs? For me, I just, Councilmember Salazar and I attended the RAC meeting, which was on April 19th. One of the issues, not the issue, but one of the concerns was that May 16th is an important date for PG&E to keep that appointment in order for the electrical to have us continue the project and not have delays. I have also took this progress seminar opportunity to speak to a representative from PG&E to express the importance for the community and I think for all. Also on April 15th, there was a ribbon cutting ceremony, and Councilmember Salazar was there for the completion of Phase 2 of the Whipple to the I-380. Being on that regional body, I took that opportunity to, since I had to introduce her, the Caltrain regional director for the entire region of 4, and expressed to her some of my thoughts on the litter and encampments in the community of San Bruno. I was not did that after the conclusion of the ceremony, but did take that opportunity. And as the Vice Mayor said, as far as Progress Seminar, it does give an opportunity to speak, and you know, whether it was about the Caltrans vacant lot, whether it was about with the other neighboring communities about what is facing them, some city managers, other organizations, and there is great value because we are all there, as well as having that opportunity to connect. On April 20th, commute.org met. I'm on the board there, and we needed to finalize our TDM, which I have passed on to staff for that. And then on the Finance and Administration Committee for the Emergency Services, there are 5 jurisdictions in the county, San Bruno being one of the 5 that serve on it. We went over the hazmat contract services for the county and the annual cost to each municipality when it comes to what the city of San Bruno pays County pays half, and then it's divided to the rest of the jurisdictions, and whether we would use reserves or not, that will be going to the full board. They have modified it to where now the chair, the vice chair, which is Warren Slocum, Supervisor Slocum, and myself as vice chair, will now start to devise and create the agenda for the body. So I just wanted to bring that up. Are there anything else for committee report outs? If not, let's move on to item number 9, comments from council members. Any comments from council members? Councilmember Medina.
Yes. Tomorrow is the grocery distribution at Bel Air Elementary School. It runs from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We are anticipating at least 250 families who will receive groceries. So if you know of somebody or if you need some help this month, please stop by between the hours of 2 to 4 p.m. There becomes a line there as it gets later in the afternoon. Also, if you're interested in volunteering, we will be happy to welcome you. Try to get there around 1:45 at 450 3rd Avenue at Bel Air Elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hamilton.
I will echo that. Just to, if you are in need of groceries, they can sign you up for the program live on site, and at the same time you get your groceries. So if you haven't participated in it before and you are in need, they can absolutely help you. And please, I encourage you to come out tomorrow and to volunteer. We always need more hands. I just want a quick shout out. Our resident and planter queen, Nancy Foreman, spoke earlier at public comment to thank a bunch of folks. So I won't re-thank all those same folks, but I want to thank Nancy for her work and dedication with the Adopt a Planter program, and it was great to participate in that. And also want to mention that this coming Saturday is the monthly pancake breakfast at the American Legion. That'll run from 9 to 11 on Saturday. And so come out and get a great breakfast and support a good cause. And it conflicts with our the garbage event, but maybe you can figure out how to do both. Thank you.
Thank you. There will be no others. Two quick items. I did want to say that I attended the Parks and Recreation Commission as Mark Ishan received the 2023 Annual Community Recognition Award. And I spoke there, and he had a lot of folks that attended. He's done decades of service for the Scouts and at various levels, even though his kids are no kids and are not in the program, he continues to do so. And so I wanted to congratulate him and give him thanks. And I stopped by on April 15th, the CERT graduation, so congratulations to those, and we appreciate all that sign up and give of their 6 weeks and a Saturday in order to achieve that and be prepared to serve the community and their families and neighborhoods if and when necessary. And it usually is not an if, but a when. So with that, I would say I now would like to adjourn this meeting to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on May 9th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned.